What is possible in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? How do we set realistic expectations for long-term progress? These are the big questions we are grappling with in this episode. Welcome to Beauty and the Gi, the podcast about jiu-jitsu and so much more. I'm Jen Eads, a blue belt full of curiosity and questions about jiu-jitsu.
And I'm AJ Klingerman, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt obsessed with jiu-jitsu.
If you are new to the podcast, welcome. We've made a starter pack for you. It's a Spotify playlist, and there is a link to it in the episode description. We highly recommend you start there. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I think we do have some new friends because some people were commenting on the women's pages. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Welcome. This episode is from a recent listener question. You know how much we love your questions. Keep them coming. And chances are good that if you have a question, somebody else is going to be thinking the same question. So DM us on Instagram at Beauty and the Gi Podcast or send us an email. That's how we got this listener question. So shout out to Cindy.
Thanks for the very tough question.
This was one of the hardest questions, I think, we've been asked because it was so broad.
And it's very subjective.
I feel very much like Casey Kasem reading a listener question now. I'm going to send out a long distance dedication.
I love it. I love it. Long distance dedication to Cindy.
So the question Cindy asks is, how can you get a realistic sense of how much skill you could develop in jiu-jitsu over the years if you stick with it?
It's hard. It's very hard. I think that it does vary for different people, and it varies by school. But let's get into a little bit more about how you want to approach the subject.
Okay. Well, one of the things that made it so challenging for me was she used the word realistic. And I've been known to sometimes not have realistic expectations of. You're nodding in agreement, like you've been witness to it.
Jen thinks that she should never do anything wrong.
See, I said I struggle with realistic. So I thought that we would take a three-pronged approach to answering this question because there's so much. So we'd look at it from a time/belt milestone prong. And then the second prong being like where you are as far as mastering the technique at that particular stage. And then mentally, where are you?
I like that on the page, though, it says mental mastery, which sounds even harder than technique mastery.
It really does. I struggle. The mental piece is way harder for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's probably hardest for most people.
We are going to base our answers on women 35 to 44. Thank you, Spotify, for giving me the analytics of who our demographic is.
Demographic, great.
And we're going to say that they train an average of 3 times a week because that's what I train average.
Yes. I also think it's funny that it's based on women 35 to 44, which both of us are not pretty past.
Very past. But that's who's listening.
I am not past it until next Wednesday.
Oh.
So then I'll be past it.
Yes. I am well past it. So let's start with year 1, white belts.
All right. Year 1, white belt. Here's the thing. For the first 6 months, I think most people are drowning in information. I think that people come in all the time and they're like, well, I don't know how to do everything that's being done to me. Yep, that's true. Like if you knew everything right off the street, then you wouldn't need to be here, right?
Yeah.
So I think the first 6 months, it's just a fire hose of information of trying to pick up a little bit from every spot and just, from the mental aspect, knowing that I guess getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, knowing that it's okay to be bad at something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's hard for a lot of people.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's really good for you too.
It is.
Yeah. So I think from a technique spot in the first, so that's first 6 months, not year, but as you progress, after 6 months, somebody new is going to come in and you're going to hit the sweep you've been trying to hit. And you'll be like, oh my God, that worked.
Yeah.
It worked. I got it, And that's, again, this is not for everybody, but this is just like an overall kind of what I witness, right? So I think that the first year is a little bit about survival and starting to recognize certain things. For example, when somebody comes in for their first class, we'll teach them a few things, maybe a Kimura, sit-up sweep, whatever. And I'm going to say, you don't have to remember that this is a Kimura, like what the word is. But I want you to have this recognition of like, next time somebody is like, have you learned a Kimura? You'd be like, that is familiar. I think I've heard that word before. And so just bit by bit, you start kind of collecting things, you start gaining some knowledge. I highly recommend that you start taking notes from the very beginning.
Yes.
Because it'll be really cool to look back and see how much your notes have changed. And it'll really help you start to remember what you're working on.
I love that.
What do I focus on at this stage? I think it's survival and kind of collecting a little bit of knowledge.
Okay.
Our curriculum is like a year long. It's really like 14 months, but we'll touch on several things multiple times throughout the year. For example, there might be a guard month, and I would teach you a Kimura in that. And then there's going to be like an attacks month, and you might learn a Kimura in that. And then there will be an escapes month, and you're learning how to escape the Kimura. So you're seeing it multiple times throughout the year in different ways. So I think it's just starting to recognize, oh, okay, I might have learned this before. Let's see if I can pick up another detail or like even remember what it is that I'm doing, that kind of thing.
Okay, then what about once we get to year 2, 3? So maybe deeper into white, possibly getting into blue belts.
Yeah. One thing I want to see at that point is that you have a little bit of a game from everywhere. A good example would be maybe you've gotten really good at being on top, but you haven't played much guard. That happens a lot with wrestlers, right? So as you're heading towards that blue belt, I want to see a little bit of a well-rounded game. Not that you know like everything from everywhere, but that you have a little bit of something from everywhere. So
Mentally, what are you looking for?
This, especially like as you progress into blue belt, is a little bit less ego, like a little less of a need to murder everyone. I think when you very first come in, you think like, in order to be good, I have to dominate every round. So like as you get into blue belt, I want to see you like working with people a little more, maybe taking one of the white belts under your wing, just being a little more able to work with people and not feel like you have to win every round. So in the olden days, I used to tell women that came into my old academy that you can roll with any other woman at the gym and any man that was a blue belt or above, because a lot of the white belt guys had a lot of ego. And if you did something well to them, they might punish you for it, kind of thing. Not the way I want it to be, not the way my gym is now. It's just how it used to be, okay? So then I remember a guy came up to me and was like, why don't I have my blue belt yet? And I was like, because I cannot trust you to roll with the women.
Wow.
So like that was kind of one of the things I was looking for, was that he wouldn't try to break one of the women just because they got a pass on him or something like that. So that's something, is like just a little less ego. And then because we're talking about year 2 to 3 and into the blue belt, potentially not quitting. Because blue belt blues are real.
They are real.
And there are several reasons that people quit at blue belt. One is blue belt was the goal. They got their blue belt and they quit. And there are students that I fear this from, I fear that their main goal is getting their blue belt and then they'll bounce. Now, does that mean that I don't give them a blue belt? No, that's their journey, if that's what they want. But it does make me sad. It makes me so sad. The other thing is blue belt waters are deep. So, that first year that you're a blue belt, you're fighting people that are blue belts for 4 years. That's really, really hard. And so sometimes you get discouraged and people quit because of that, because they feel like well, now they're a blue belt, they should beat other blue belts, or they should beat all of the white belts. Not true. Just because you got your blue belt a month ago doesn't mean you beat up the white belts, right? But yeah, so I think from a mental standpoint, it's, less ego and tenacity.
What should you be able to recognize at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of see the techniques a little bit. Maybe you recognize, oh, I shouldn't have put my hand there, or all my weight was to one side and I need to recognize when they start to roll me, or, I saw that submission coming. I couldn't remember how to defend it, but
I live in that spot.
I mean, really, that's at least I recognized that it was coming. Mm-hmm. And I think little things like that, just being able to recognize it's happening. Maybe you can't always defend it or stop it or whatever, but you're starting to see that. And then you can go back and go, okay, how do I defend it? I'm going to drill that a few times in between rounds or whatever, or at least think through it in my head so that if it happens in the next round, I'm more likely to escape it.
I feel like that happens to me a lot. I see it coming.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I know it's going to happen. Shoot. Oh, what do I do?
And I mean, I'm a black belt, and that still happens to me. Brisser will sweep me, and I'll be like, shoot. Saw it coming, thought I could stop it, didn't.
Yeah. Okay, heading into purple.
I think that you should have a solid game, right? Towards the end of your blue, I want to see more than you only have one guard. Okay. That happens a lot. You started developing a guard at blue belt and focusing on a certain style. Mm-hmm. And then once you're heading into purple, I want to see that you can have a more rounded guard, right? That you're not just doing one thing all the time. So I think that from a technique standpoint, you have a well-rounded game. From a mental standpoint, I want to start seeing you be a leader. You should be kind of taking people under your belt. You should be, or under your wing, or however you want to. But, kind of mentoring a little bit, even if you don't want, because, some people, everyone's journey is different. Everyone's reason for doing jiu-jitsu is different. And some people are just naturally a little more selfish with that. And I'm not saying that is a bad thing. If you want to come in, do your thing, that's fine. But I think you'll be more successful being a leader. I think a lot of people learn a lot by teaching others. So having somebody that you can work with and build up, one, creates a better training partner for you. Mm-hmm. And two, I think you learn a lot of little things by teaching.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. I like that I said I had nothing to say on this subject and can't shut up. Here we are.
I had a feeling that you would find something.
Just pull it out of my hiney.
All right. What about brown?
Brown, a lot is preparation for black belt. I know that kind of seems silly, but that really is what brown is. Brown is kind of just cleaning the last minute things up before you get your black belt. To me, you already have a good game. You already are a leader. It really is just, focusing on a few little things, and those are going to be different for everybody, but it is preparing to be a black belt.
So what about black belt?
You start over.
Yeah.
Do it again from the top. I'm just surviving. I'm trying to collect some knowledge. Yeah, I mean, they joke about you starting over, but there is an extent that that's what you're doing. Black belt waters are the deepest. You can go and compete as a brand new black belt against somebody that's been training longer than you've been alive.
Yeah, right.
It's a wild place. But here's one thing, I think Cindy was asking, what kind of knowledge can I expect to gain? And I don't know if we've answered that, because it's so vast. Mm-hmm. And some schools only focus on very bare bones fundamentals. Some schools only focus on really fancy stuff. Some schools, focus mostly on legs. It just could not depend more. It could not be more like, Yeah. But it's, I guess, just kind of the mentality that I'm looking for and the little kind of overall things that I'm looking for is something we can touch on. But I don't know if we answered the question.
Yeah. Well, even going back and rereading this, and there's like that sense of how much skill could you get? I feel like it's limitless. But part of that depends so much on you and how often you're training. And are you taking notes? Are you taping your rounds and then getting feedback? Are you going to camps? Are you competing?
Yep.
I feel like the world is limitless with what you could do.
Yeah.
But then there's that silly little word of realistic. And some of that, I think, depends on what's your schedule like? What responsibilities do you have outside of training jiu-jitsu?
Yeah.
What's your work schedule? What's your travel schedule? There's so much that goes into it. And I think it's really taking a step back and figuring out what is realistic for you as an individual. And then once you have that figured out, not comparing to everyone else, because I've been known to fall into that trap.
Yeah. Yeah. And that might change. Like, you said what's right for you as an individual, but, maybe at blue belt, you compete constantly. You go to every seminar, you do all the things, but then at purple, your life changes and you can only make it onto the mat a couple times a week, or you have to take a few months off for an injury or whatever, like it's a living, breathing thing, right?
It really is.
It really is. It's going to change. And what I started to say that I lost my train of thought on is that one of the most important things I need everyone to recognize is at the end, we're all black belts, right? Like if you just keep going, you don't have to worry about like falling behind one of your peers or your gym or whatever. If you just keep at it, we're all black belts together. It's wild to think of the people that I looked up to that were black belts when I was a white belt, and now we're in the same divisions together. And so, the real answer is no matter what your journey, no matter what your gym is doing, stay the course and we'll all be black belts together.
I think this is a really good time, too, to remind our friends how long you were a white belt.
13 and a half years. Now, did I train that whole time? Definitely not. I dabbled a little in like 99, 2000, didn't train for a few years, really. Came back in 2004 and trained constantly, started competing, and then didn't train much again until like 2009. Got depressed in 2010, didn't train a lot. And then like 2011 started kind of coming back and like really getting into it, and then got my blue belt in May of 2013. So it was 13 and a half years that I was a white belt. And, a lot of people teased me about it or whatever, but that was my journey. Yeah. The mats always welcomed me back, and I just kept at it. I was not obsessed with jiu-jitsu at white belt, not at all. I mostly trained if there was another woman on the mat, which was a rarity. And then, 2011 is when I really started getting some training partners, and 2013 is when I started the women's class. And that again, really, so like 2013 got my blue belt in May, started the women's class in June. And that is what made me obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Right. It was becoming a leader and taking people under my wing that really made me obsessed with it, because the reality is I'm obsessed with the community.
Right.
So, yeah.
There you have a very simple answer to...
Such a simple answer to such a simple question. The real final answer is it depends.
Exactly. So what I want to know from our listeners, because as we mentioned, we love hearing from you all, is what's the biggest breakthrough or aha moment that you've experienced so far in your jiu-jitsu journey? And how long have you been training when you had it?
Okay. Can you answer that?
Hold on.
Okay.
You can leave a comment if you're listening to this in Spotify or if you're watching it on YouTube, or you can DM us and let us know. Okay, now that was really just trying to buy time to answer this question.
I can't believe you came up with a question and not an answer.
Okay, truth be told, ChatGPT came up with that.
Nice job.
Because in full transparency, when I sat down to try to outline how we were going to answer this question, I was like, hey, ChatGPT, I need some help.
Yeah.
Give me some thoughts. That is blue belt resourcefulness.
I like
right
it.
there,
I like
off the mat. Yes. My biggest breakthrough or aha moment, I think it was when I just decided that I didn't like being smashed on the bottom anymore.
Yeah.
And that I didn't want to live there. So it wasn't, I learned something. It was more a shift in, I don't like it here. I don't want to be here. What do I have to do to get out of this?
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say you being on bottom was probably what your biggest breakthrough was. Like, wait, I don't have to be here.
I don't like
I can get
this.
out from under here and be on top instead.
Yeah. Not that I've mastered getting myself out of there by any stretch of the imagination, but just being like, oh, no, I'm not. This is not where we're going today.
And I mean, I see you have aha moments all the time. Oftentimes in class, people will be like, oh, you do it that way? Shoot, I was not doing that. That's so much easier.
Yeah.
Like that. I see that constantly. And I joke, like I love that like right is easier.
And it's always the dumbest little thing, that little adjustment that makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah. We have shirts that say, get out of your own way, which is really the little things, right? That you were in your own way, and let go of the grips that don't serve you. Because like a great example, I talked about spider yesterday and how people that have the spider position will let go with their hands and the other people will keep a hold of the legs and they're like, I'm caught in spider. And I'm like, no, you're not. They don't have you. Let go of the grips that don't serve you.
Ooh, I think that's great life advice for on and off the mat, which segues so smoothly into on and off the mat tips for this week.
Excellent.
So my tip is on the mat, and that is keep showing up, because you never know when you're going to learn that one seemingly little insignificant detail that changes everything.
Nice. All right. So I'm going to go stray.
Of course.
Of course. Because it's almost my birthday. Da-na-na-na. Oh, sorry.
Which technically means it's almost mine, too.
Exactly. We're both Libras. We like things in balance. I know nothing about astrology. Ooh, that could be a fun guest to have. Like we did the Enneagram stuff. Like have somebody like read our charts or whatever.
Ooh.
All right. If you're that person, contact us.
Let us know.
How it could relate to jiu-jitsu would be so freaking cool.
That would be awesome.
Anyways, my birthday is next Wednesday, October 2nd, and I love my birthday. I've made some videos on it, but like I believe that you get a day for every year you are old to celebrate. So I have 45 days right now. With that said, most people don't know we're celebrating. It's all in my head. So my mom and I are going to go to lunch today. In my head, that's for my birthday, even though we go to lunch once a week. But for 45 days, it's for my birthday. So things like that. But we're doing two things, kind of giveaway type things for my birthday. Not giveaway, one giveaway. We are giving away 3 spots to camp.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So to our Indy Base Camp, which is July 11th through the 13th in Indianapolis. It's the biggest women's only grappling camp in the world. And we're giving away 3 spots. 1 on TikTok, 1 on Facebook, and 1 on Instagram. I made a video. You just have to comment on it, why you should get the spot or nominate somebody else to get it.
Cool.
Key detail here. No one has commented on TikTok yet. So you could be the one comment on TikTok and win the spot, which is wild. So that's your best way to get in.
Nice.
So that is one thing we're doing. And the other thing is, because it's my 45th birthday, we are going to put a bunch of rash guards, shorts, all that kind of stuff on sale October 2nd only. So just on my birthday for 45% off.
Ooh, I'm going shopping.
I was like, I know it's crazy. It's wild. It's way too much. It takes us, like under cost a little bit on some of it. But I was just like, you know what? I want to go big. I want to just like have like the ultimate sleigh day. And so 45% off for my 45th birthday.
I love it.
I'm so excited.
That is exciting.
Yeah.
And what else is coming up for you?
Well, we just finished up our white belt stand-up camp, which was fantastic. It went so well. And our next white belt camp is January 31st through February 2nd. And it is going to be a competition prep camp.
Ooh.
I am so excited for this. So whether you want to compete or not, this will be a really good camp. It will help you level up your jiu-jitsu in every way. It is not murder, death, kill. In other words, we will not just be like fighting all weekend. It will be a lot of work, but also very cerebral and a lot of like mental stuff too. I'm working on like a workbook to go with it, kind of a training schedule for 6 weeks leading into a competition. If you are doing gi pans, camp is like 6 or 7 weeks before gi pans. So it's perfect timing to lead you into prepping for that.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm really excited. We already have people registering because we did open it up at the white belt camp. So people are already getting registered, and we will keep it probably to around 24, 26 people, just so we can keep it kind of small so we can give real individualized advice. And it's only $200.
Nice.
Which is... it's hard for me because like I recognize that it should be more, right? Like it's worth a lot more. But I also know that jiu-jitsu is already very expensive. And, I want people to come to our Indy Base Camp and stuff like that. And so we try to make it as affordable as possible. Also, this is a co-ed camp. So there will be men and women at this camp. You can register at rolemodelswanted.com.
Fantastic. All right, friends, thanks for tuning in. We love to hear from you. You can find us hanging out on Instagram at Beauty in the Gi Podcast. I'm also there at Brassy Broad Jen, and on TikTok at Brassy Broad Jen. And on LinkedIn, you can find me as Jen Eads. Ooh, I'm so fancy and professional.
I really should log into my LinkedIn.
You really should.
I think I started to the other day and like cleaned up a little bit of stuff because it had some real old information on it.
I'm sure it did.
I'm AJ Klingerman everywhere you go except TikTok, where I'm roll_model. Don't forget, you could win the camp spot on my TikTok.
So exciting.
Yeah.
All right, friends, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you on the mat. Beauty in the Gi is a production of the Brassy Broadcasting Company.
And brought to you by Role Model Grappling.